Here we are going to graph the conic section, parabolas. The following two equations are the standard form for parabola. You can tell that these equations will become parabolas because they only have one term that's squared, where the other three conic sections have both x squareds and y squareds. Each parabolic graph will consist of four pieces: the focal point, the vertex, the directrix, and of course the parabola itself. The focal point and the vertex are both coordinate points x, y, where the directrix, depending on the orientation of your parabola, will be either a vertical line or a horizontal line. We can have four different orientations for a parabolic graph. Our two options are either it'll open up or down vertically or left to right horizontally. You can tell the orientation of the graph by two pieces of the equation. The first is what term is squared. Whenever the x term is squared, it's going to open up or down vertically. If the y term is squared, it's going to open either to the right or to the left. You'll be able to tell if it opens up or down by the c value. If the c value is greater than 0, it's going to open up. If the c value is less than 0, it'll open down. And remember, c is the distance from the focus and directrix to the vertex. Similarly, for horizontal, it'll either open to the right if c is positive, or it'll open left if c is negative. We're going to graph x plus 1 squared equals negative 2 times y minus 1. The first thing you need to do is determine your orientation. Since the x term is squared, it's going to be a vertical orientation. And since this term in front of the y is negative, it's going to open down. Next, we need to determine our c value. 4 times c is going to equal whatever term, whatever value is in front of the y minus 1. So c is going to equal 2. Solve for c. c equals negative 1/2. Now we have enough information from our equation to determine the vertex, the focus, and the directrix. The vertex is going to be negative 1, comma, positive 1. The focus is going to be, since we have a point of negative 1, positive 1, our focus is going to drop down the c value. So the x value is going to stay the same, and the c value, we're going to take away this 1/2 from the y value in the vertex, so we're going to end up with 1/2. And then the directrix is going to be the opposite direction from the vertex, so that's going to be a horizontal line at 1.5. So I just added that 1/2 to this value again. Next, we're going to need a table of values. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to isolate y in your equation. So I'm going to divide by 2, the negative 2, and then I'm going to add 1, and that's going to give me an equation where we solve for y. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a table of values. The vertex is going to go into the middle of my table. And then I'm going to plug in x values that are above and below my vertex. So when I plug in negative 3 into this equation, I'll get negative 3 plus 1 squared over 2. That's going to be negative 2 squared is positive 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2 plus 1 is going to give me a value of negative 1. And then when I plug in negative 2, I'm going to end up with 1/2. When I plug in 0, I'm going to end up with 1/2 as well. And when I plug in positive 1, I'm going to end up with negative 1 again. So now we have enough information to create a graph. The first thing that's going to go on our graph is the vertex, negative 1, 1. Label your coordinate points. The focus is going to come next, and that's going to be negative 1, 1/2. Plot the other points from the table. Connect the parabola. And then finally, we are going to put the directrix onto our graph, and that's going to be a horizontal line at y equals 1/2. The final example I want to show you is how to create a graph when we're given a vertex and a focus. So here we have a vertex of 2, 1 and a focus of 4, 1. First thing I'm going to do is just draw a quick sketch just to see the orientation of my graph. So if I have 2, 1 here, and then the focus is going to be to the right, 4, 1. This tells me two things. It tells me the orientation is going to be horizontal, and it also tells me that it opens to the right. Knowing the orientation is very important because it tells you which equation to use. So I'm going to have y minus y naught squared equals 4 times c times x minus x naught. Then I'm going to fill in all of my information. I know my vertex is at 2, 1, so minus 1 squared equals x minus 2. And I also know my c value. My c value is the distance from the vertex to the focus. This c value is going to be a positive 2 because I'm moving to the right. So then 4 times c is 8. The only thing left is to create a table of values. So this time, instead of solving for y, I'm going to solve for x. The reason behind that is that it's going to be so much easier to plug in y values instead of x values. So then when I make my table, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. My vertex is still going to go in the middle. But this time, instead of plugging in x values, I'm going to plug in y values. The reason why I'm doing this is so I can avoid taking square roots of anything. So I'm going to take a look at my equation, and you get to pick whatever number you want to plug in. And I personally like to avoid fractions, so I'm going to take a look at this equation here. And I know if I square 4, I'm going to be able to divide that by 8. So the number I'm going to plug in here is 5. Because 5 minus 1 squared over 8 gives me 16 over 2. If I add 2 to that, it's going to give me 4. And I'm going to do the same thing with negative 3. Because negative 3 minus 1 squared gives me 16 as well. So here is my table. Really, you only need 3 points. 5 points would be perfect, but 3 will get the job done. I'm going to start my graph with the given information of the vertex and the focus. Then I'll continue plotting the other 2 points that I found for my table. We also need the directrix. The directrix is going to be at y equals 0. I found that from moving back the c value from the vertex. So if the vertex is at 2, my directrix is going to be a vertical line at x equals 0. Connect the points for my parabola. And then don't forget to label the coordinate points for your vertex and your focus. And there's a complete graph given a vertex of 2, 1 and with a focus of 4, 1.